What's going on, family? Welcome back to Shifting the Culture podcast. And tonight we want to discuss the recent arrests of Big U, Bricc Baby, Luce Cannon, and Yella Beezy. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up those articles real quick, and we'll jump right into it, family. If you're watching from YouTube, make sure you smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, hit that bell so you can stay notified every time that we drop a video. I need the Facebook family to make sure you like and share. Twitter family, make sure that you retweet. All right, so right here, a couple of days ago, March 21st, from the Dallas Morning News, it says that Yella Beezy arrested and killing a Mo 3. All right, back in 2020. Dallas rapper Yella Beezy was arrested this week and is accused of hiring a hitman to kill fellow rapper Melvin Nobles, known as Mo 3, in 2020. As of Friday, Beezy, whose birth name is Marquise DeAndre Conway, was being held on a $2 million bail in the Dallas County Jail. Conway was indicted by a Dallas County grand jury Tuesday in connection to the murder. In the Los Angeles Times, it talks about the charges that were brought against Big U and others in what they call Operation Drawdown over the Rolling 60s Crips. It says federal authorities this week announced that more than a dozen of Rolling 60s Crips members and associates, including Eugene Big U Henley, have been charged in a sprawling criminal case. Henley, who helped launch rapper Nipsey Hussle's career, has been accused in a federal complaint of running a mafia-like criminal enterprise that carried out a series of racketeering crimes, including extortion, human trafficking, fraud, and the 2021 murder of an aspiring rap musician. And then lastly, from hotnewhiphop.com, it says Bricc Baby and others reportedly arrested in gang takedown as authorities search for Big U. So Bricc Baby and them was locked up before Big U turned himself in, because Big U turned himself in. So it says, according to U.S. Attorney Joseph T. McNally, Bricc Baby and others were arrested in an attempt to make our communities safer. Today, it was reported that Bricc Baby was arrested in Los Angeles. According to No Jumper, go figure, the arrest was part of a Rolling 60s gang takedown called Operation Drawdown. Various other individuals were also arrested, including Luce Cannon. Federal authorities are now looking for Big U. Like I said, this arrest took place prior to Big U turning himself in. This was March 19th when this happened. So within the last week, family, you've had multiple arrests that are taking place. Multiple arrests. So, man, this is it's a lot of stuff going on. It's just a lot happening. As we like to say all the time, man, there's a lot going on. It's a lot going on. And so, I wanted to touch on this because one of the things that I noticed is, number one, we noticed the use of the RICO heavily. The racketeering, conspiracy, those that use of that tool by the federal government, because that's what it is. I mean, it's a tool by the federal government that was used specifically or developed specifically for the mafia. That's what it's called. That's what it was developed for. Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act, right? I'm going to just read exactly what it says. It says, it's a charge that stems from racketeering activity, which is a pattern of criminal offenses committed as a part of an organized criminal enterprise and can carry several or severe penalties, including lengthy prison sentences. So the RICO charge, again, was developed in order to take down the mafia and the mob. That's what the RICO was created for, because they was having trouble catching the bosses or the heads of the crime families in criminal activity, because they were so organized that there was rarely any opportunity to catch the heads of the crime bosses or the heads of the crime families in any acts. So because they were so organized, the federal government had to create a charge that would include those a part of the criminal organization. That's why the RICO charge was developed, and now you see the RICO charge being used against rap labels that they're now classifying as criminal organizations, because people who may be a part of the streets may also be affiliated with these rap artists and these labels, and that's how they getting caught up on the RICO. But this is what I want to get into, right? The hip hop conspiracy, because in this book right here, our good brother, student minister Dr. Wesley Muhammad, goes into the government's involvement and use of hip hop in society, and how they use and influence hip hop to push their agendas. And former Secretary of State, as well as former First Lady of the United States, Hillary Clinton, admits that they use hip hop as a tool. And she says, right here, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on hip hop as a tool at the U.S. government's disposal. So we move a lot of different pieces on the chessboard every day. It's multi-dimensional chess, if you will. Hip hop can be used as a chess piece? Absolutely, Clinton laughed. So Dr. Wesley goes on to say, it is in fact that the powers that be outside of hip hop use the control of hip hop to advance their own nefarious agendas. In 2010, then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton openly admitted that hip hop was a tool of the U.S. government's disposal. And this is the first thing I thought of when I saw the different reports coming out about what was taking place, with Big U, Bricc Baby, Luce Cannon, Yella Beezy, Lil Durk a couple of months back, Young Thug a year and some change back, and just all of these different things that are taking place. Now, let me just go ahead and say this off the rip. What we're not doing is glorifying criminal behavior. What we are not doing is glorifying criminal behavior. If you are out here committing crimes, then you should be held accountable for your actions. I'm going to say that again. If you out here committing crimes, criminal activity, you become a menace to society, then you should be held accountable. You should be held accountable for your crimes. That's not what we're discussing here. What we are discussing here is the government's infiltration into hip hop and the continual pattern that we see of our people getting caught up in this web that the government has spun. Because if you notice, a lot of these artists are going onto certain platforms, and when they get on these platforms, shortly after that, violence take place or arrests take place. You literally have an artist come onto these different platforms such as No Jumper. We're going to name them. No Jumper, Vlad TV. They go on there, they have quote-unquote interviews, and then shortly after those interviews, either violence takes place or arrests come down the pipe. That's just what it is. That's just keeping it real, right? And what we are gathering from years of seeing this play out is that these podcast platforms possibly could be under the influence and use of the authorities of the United States government in a plan, in a plot, in a conspiracy to take down black artists, young black men specifically, but hip hop artists, right? Again, we're not glorifying any criminal activity. So if you are dumb enough to be a criminal and commit crimes and then go on the internet and talk about it, number one, you deserve everything coming for you. Number two, you deserve everything coming for you in the first place because you shouldn't be committing those crimes. But again, what we are highlighting is how they're utilizing, how the United States government and social media glorifies the lifestyle, glorifies the music and the lyrics, the violence that is in the streets, in the drug game, in the gangs, the murders, glorifies it, pays artists big sign-on bonuses, if you will, big advances, Leo Cohen was on the Breakfast Club, and he talked about how he would go and sign talent that are part of gangs. He wants all of the gang members to be signed to 300 ENT. This is what Leo Cohen was saying on the Breakfast Club. Essentially, why? Because when they make that type of music makes money. So they would glorify that type of music and those artists for the financial gain, for the revenue that they will receive from it. And what the artists got out of it, they got a little piece of money, they got some fame, which is the biggest thing, but they also got clout. And that's what I want to talk about, how society has given gangsters the clout on social media. So the more violent you are on social media, and the more open you are about the violence that you commit on social media, the more likes, the more popular, the more clout, the more influence that you have, in the community, if you will. And that's a problem. And that's what you see going on and happening right now. And the streets used to be like this. Back when I was growing up, there was a code that existed for people who was in the streets. And that code was, if we agreed to go into criminal activity, criminal business together, then we wasn't going to snitch on each other. If one of us got caught, it was already a known thing that if you went down, you went down, but you held it down, right? You didn't go in there. Y'all heard the term loose lips sink ships, but you wasn't going to sink the whole ship because you had loose lips, because we agreed that we was getting into this together. Now, let me explain something to the viewing audience, okay? Because what I'm saying is, when you agree to be in the streets, that's the difference from living as a civilian. All of us, when we came into this world, were civilians first. If you are a civilian, you have a 9-to-5 job. You have no ties to the streets. You commit no crimes. You are a part of no gang-related activity. You are a tax-paying citizen. If you view a crime, if you are a witness to a crime, you are supposed to go and tell the authorities. I'm going to say that again. If you are a tax-paying citizen, you work a 9-to-5 job and have no ties to the streets, if you witness a crime, your duty, your obligation is to go to the authorities, and you are supposed to tell them everything you saw, who you saw, what you saw, where you saw it at, what time you saw it. That is your duty, to deliver that information to the authorities so that they can get those criminals off the street. That's your duty as a civilian. But the moment you trade your civilian card in because you want to get some money out the street, you want to sell drugs, you want to slide, you want to be a shooter, whatever it is that you decide you want to do when it comes to the streets, once you decide to do that, you turn in your civilian card, and now you fall under the street code. And once you fall under the street code, that means you have made a conscious decision to go into business in the streets. And anything that happens with the business in the streets, if you get caught by the authorities committing illegal activities, you are not supposed to tell on your business partners or associates. That's just the rules. I didn't make them up. Don't blame me. But that's just the rules. Okay? So we can't now start changing the rules because society now has incentivized snitching. Because that's what snitching is. When you agree to go into business in the streets and then you tell on your homeboys, you tell on your business partners, you a snitch. You a rat. That's what a rat is. Because you don't go and tell the family business. That's what you don't do as a member of the streets now. You can't do that. You wanted to snitch, you wanted to inform the authorities of crimes, then you do that as a civilian. There's nothing wrong with that. That's your duty as a civilian. I'm a civilian. So if I see something, I'm telling. It's real. I'm a civilian. So if I see something, we gonna tell. In the Nation of Islam, we don't believe in snitching. If we see somebody doing something wrong, then we're going to report them up the chain of command, because we don't involve ourselves in wrongdoing. But see, that's what civilians do. Law-abiding civilians do. But if you're not that, if you're not a law-abiding civilian, citizen, taxpaying, and you are committing crimes in the streets with other people you agreed to do it with, no. You can't then get a moral compass and then go and tell on your homeboys because you got caught. So you're going to bring everybody down with you. That's not how they go. But listen, society now has now incentivized, as I mentioned before, snitching, rats, informants, people who turned state, became a witness. These individuals now have become public figures. Let me tell you what I mean. Before, you could, if you turned state and became a witness for the prosecution or whatever the case may be, you were put in something called witness protection. Nobody knew who you were. Your name was blurred out on paperwork. Like, they did everything anonymously. Because why? The code in the streets were that we don't cooperate with the government. So if we're not cooperating with the government and we find out that you was with us, but now you with them, then we got to make an example out of you. That was the struggle between the streets and law enforcement, because that wasn't tolerated in the streets. But what happens is the government has infiltrated the streets and made them weak. The code don't exist no more. The streets is sweet now. So because the streets are sweet and they got rid of all the OGs who live by the code, they went to jail or they in the grave. And now they reintroduce young people, the YNs, to the game. And they don't have no code that they living by and being held to. And they eating too much soy and high fructose corn syrup and red dye and blue dye and yellow dye. They couldn't withstand the onslaught from the U.S. government. So the government snuck in and cut a deal with the streets now and say, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. We running this thing right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to incentivize y'all to keep the violence going. But if anybody get caught and become a rat, matter of fact, we're going to glorify the rats. We're going to publicize the rats. We're going to put them out front. Because now you can get clout, you can get influence, you can get money from being a snitch. Just think about it like this. I was thinking about this the other day. You know, political assassinations that the U.S. government used to carry out used to be out front. You know, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Senator Robert Kennedy, President John F. Kennedy. Those assassinations was carried out right in front of our faces. I mean, point blank range. They blew Kennedy's head smooth off. They ran up on the stage in Audubon Ballroom and shot Malcolm. They blew Martin Luther King away right in front of the eyes of the people. But at a certain point, the government had to say, wait a minute, we can't continue to commit these political assassinations in front of the people. Number one, because it doesn't look good aesthetically, because people are now beginning to catch on with the advent of technology, social media, all that stuff. And then the people are also so connected to the leaders now that if you do that so blatantly, you can fear the uprising of the people. They saw that after the assassination of Martin Luther King and all of the riots that took place. You saw that as people began to rise up and protest against these political assassinations. So they had to move away from being out front with it, and they had to start figuring out covert ways to try to take out political adversaries of the United States government, right? But check this out. The opposite took place in the streets. They said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put the snitches out front. Before, they was in WITSEC. They was behind the scenes. Nobody knew who they were. But what they did was they softened up the streets. And because there was no consequences for snitching now, they said, let's emphasize the rats. Let's put the rats out front in the public eye so the people would fear retribution against those who turn state, so they would leave them alone. So now what you have today is you got rats and informants that literally can walk around and be just outside. They have no fear of retribution. Why? Because the streets know that if you retaliate against them or make an example out of them, then the authorities are going to be right on you and they're going to know who did it. So because there's so much fear of the authorities now, the streets have literally been taken over by the United States government. You have the police are the gangsters now. They gangster. Everybody else just cosplaying. Everybody else just fronting and faking. And that's what you have going on right now, family. The streets is sweet. So, you have these podcast platforms that are being used as tools by agencies of the government to conduct interviews that are really interrogations. It's a totally different thing to bring somebody into the station for an interrogation. I done sat down in that room. I know what that's about. And you got to be real solid to hold and stand 10 toes. And also you have to have an understanding of the law. If you have an understanding of the law and your rights, then there's certain things that they can't get you to do and things that you're not going to do just because you know. But if you don't have that understanding of the law, they'll put you in that interrogation room and you start singing like a canary. Watch first 48. They start singing like a canary. Most of them guys and girls don't know their rights and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to be handled in that situation. But then they said, listen, how about we turn the interrogations into interviews, which they really are. I mean, they classify them as interviews now, but they're going to move the setting from a police station with detectives and put you on there with a podcast host. Put you on there with a podcast host who disguised the conversation and let you bring your homeboys in there. Remember, in the interrogation room, you can't bring nobody. It's you in there by yourself with all the police. But on the podcast interviews, they got all your boys in there with you. And they make it real comfortable for you. And then they just start probing questions. Looking for you to say certain things. Remember, there's no statute of limitations on murder. But if you don't know that, then you get to talking. And then what happens is the authorities watch. They go and they submit that footage. And then the authorities watch and they're able to take pieces and parts from what you said in the interview. And they're able to take your lyrics now. Remember, in the Young Thug case, they was using his lyrics against him. They take the lyrics and they take the content and they put it together. And guess what? They can build a case. And that's what's been taking place. They have even created an opportunity for informants to be put on social media as gangsters and as trolls who instigate beefs 24/7. Like Charleston White and other individuals who sit online on Clubhouse and Twitter Space and on YouTube, and they call people out and they cuss and they act so gangster. Like, you would never think that they were working for the police. But they set up like that on purpose. They set up like that on purpose to bring your guard down. And then they do all that rah-rah arguing. And, they from the hood and they from the streets. They had gang affiliations and things like that so they can speak the language. And they have you talking like they're a part of, like they're really a part of the community. And they're very intelligent individuals. So that's how they're able to move in and out of these rooms the way that they do. Because they're very intelligent individuals and they're able to turn on the gangster stuff when they need to. Then they can turn on the corporate police informant stuff when they need to. So they know these individuals, and these individuals are set up online strategically. And they're there to get people to ultimately incriminate themselves, family. So that's what you see happening, the hip hop conspiracy. So what we have to do is we got to clean ourselves up. If you're committing any crimes, you need to get out the street. That's first and foremost, because it's too much legal money out here that you can make where you don't become a menace to your own community. Too much. So we got to get out the streets, and we got to stop becoming tools for the government against our own people and our own rise. And we got to see the play coming a mile away. They just had the footage come out of Charleston White telling when he was 16 years old, taking a stand against his homeboy after they agreed that they was gonna go and do whatever they was gonna do. So he's been out, but you see what happened. You know, he might get knocked here and there for a little petty crime that he commit, but he right back out. Why? Because he with them. He with them. So they gotta make sure you keep some dirt on your people now. They try to keep some dirt on him so he can keep his credibility up and he can still move in and out them circles, right? So it's important for us to know that and to understand. And this is why we got to get out of the mindset of being criminally based, criminal minded. We got to get out of that mindset because crime does not pay. It does not pay. And you ultimately end up going out and getting taken down. So I encourage all of the young brothers to come up out of that, come up out of that and find a legal way to make some money, because these webs that they spinning in order to get our people into the prison industrial complex, into the school to prison pipeline is real, because all this is about is money. All this about is money. Them rats, them informants, they getting paid. But more importantly, them judges, them prosecutors, them lawyers, they getting paid. All because they got stake in private owned prisons, they getting paid. Every time somebody go to jail and get a number, that's a dollar bill. And we got to understand that, so that we can't continue to play into that web where you can continuously get caught up. And the last thing I'm going to address here really quick, the minister went over and study guide number 17 called Hypocrisy and Conspiracy. And the minister says on page 129, he said, at the root of the lies and murder plots against Jesus, Paul, Peter, Muhammad was envy. Envy arose in the hearts of the political and spiritual leadership because one was coming to replace their rule. One more favored in the sight of Allah God. One more pleasing and acceptable in the public eye. When one is an envier, he or she sees oneself as more worthy of the benefit or favor than the person or persons to whom the benefit or favor has been given. The hatred that the envier feels knowingly or unknowingly extends to the giver of gifts, the grantor of benefits, the bestower of favor, Allah God. So what happens in a lot of these crews, family, is that you got people that come into the game on the same level. But then you got those who rise up and become, the leader or the head or the one who's getting the most attention, the most money. Right. And then what happens in those who have not been able to rise up, they become envious of the one who has been able to rise up. And instead of finding out their gift, their talent, their gift that God has given them that will help them rise and become, great in their own right, they take that envy, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly, and they take that anger and they point it at the person who they came into the situation with. And this is what happens. So then when there's an opportunity for you to sell out your mans, you'll take it, because it's envy that feeds the ego. It's envy that is feeding the ego, and that envy is what causes you to turn state against the same one you said that you was never going to tell on. The same one who you sat down and made a pact and a bond and said we was going to do this together, ride or die. But you switched up. So envy is a hell of a thing. And that's one of the things that cause our people to switch up and to end up being, a part of state and informants and things like that, family. So we gotta change up what we doing. And it's an unfortunate thing. We pray for all those who've been arrested. We pray that, everybody and their family, are able to make it through these situations, but we got to be smarter. We got to move smarter. We got to move different, family. So I want you to comment your thoughts below. Let me know what's your thoughts about what's taking place, and what's your thoughts about, the hip-hop conspiracy that we mentioned today and how it's infiltrated the hip-hop game. But we gotta stay on point out here, family. Stay off them platforms. I don't care how much money they offering you. Stay off them platforms if you're participating in these different things, and go ahead and clean your life up. Join a church, come to the Nation of Islam, do something positive and productive, and stop being a menace to the streets. All right? Peace and blessings.